All right, so in this video, we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting fractions. So fractions are part of a whole, and there's a couple terms I want to get down. So if we have, for example, we'll take the quick one of fraction of 1/2. Now on the top is what we call the numerator. That's the term for the top. And in this case, that's the 1. On the bottom, it's the denominator. All right, so when I refer to your numerator and denominator, now you know what we're talking about. You can see it written like this, or sometimes I'll write it like this as the fraction, but for adding and subtracting, the best way to write it is like this. So the key thing is for adding and subtracting, what you need to know, and I'm going to start because it's very, very important, and a lot of people, this is where the common mistake comes and why they get it wrong. You must have what they call common denominators. And what I mean by that is they need to be the same number. All right, so they both, if you're adding two fractions or subtracting two fractions, they need to be the same at the bottom. Now, if they give it to you the same, that's great, it's easy. If they don't, we're going to show you how to make it them the same. So let's start off with the easy ones. Let's say I have 1/5 plus 2/5. Okay, so this is the easy part because, again, common denominators, which have the same number on the bottom, all you got to do is you add what's on top. So this one's pretty easy. 1 plus 2 gives me 3/5. Okay, subtraction's the same way. Obviously, you subtract instead of add, but again, common denominators, and you just deal with the top. So if we had something like 7/8 minus 3/8, we're going to just do this 7 minus 3, which is 4, and we keep the 8. Now, this brings up a point with the fractions, and you kind of want to do this with all fractions all the time, and any time you have it. You don't need to do it till the end, but you want to reduce or simplify. So what you want to do here is think, is there a number that can be divided by, is there a number that you can divide by 4 and divide it by 8, and you get even ones here? And in this case, it is actually 4. So if you need to divide the top by 4, you're going to divide the bottom by 4 to simplify it or to reduce it. And 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So your final answer is 1/2. Okay, this is key. This will not be a complete answer. If I got this in my class, I'm taking points off because you need to reduce. Get in the habit of always reducing. We did it in this case because you can't. 3 divided by can only be divided by 1 or 3. 5 can only be divided by 1 or 5, and if you divide by 1, you get nowhere. So this is in simplest form already. This 4/8 isn't, 1/2 is. Now it kind of brings up, let's say you have the 4/8 and you know both of them are even. So you're like, okay, I can reduce it by 2. Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So you get 2/4. Great. Not complete reduced though. Both of them, again, can be divided by 2 to get you 1/2. So you need to completely reduce it. You don't need to always, get the big number of 4. If you don't see it in the beginning, that's fine. But if you see that it's a 2 or they're both even, you can do a couple steps to get the final reducing. So those are the ones with common denominators. Now we're going to deal with ones if they don't. They'll have different denominators. So let's say, for example, we have 2/3 plus 1/4. Okay? Again, 3, 4, they're not the same. You can't add them together, or if it was subtraction, you couldn't subtract them if these are not the same. So what we have to do is make them the same. So what we have to do is we have to think of of a multiple of 3 and a 4 that they have in common. And the term is your least common multiple. Because the lowest number is the better one. You have to do less with that. So if we think of our multiples of 3, we have 3, 6, 9, 12. All right, our multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12. And you can see right there, 12 is the least common multiple in this case of 3 and 4. Sometimes you have to multiply them together because 3 times 4 is 12. Sometimes there's one lower. Once you get more practice with it, you'll kind of get the hang of it. So what we want to do is we're going to make these fractions now, and we're going to turn them into two other fractions that have that denominator of 12. Okay? Now, just kind of like how we reduced here, these are all the same values. That 4/8, 2/4, 1/2 means all the same. We want to make this fraction and this fraction be exactly the same. So what we have to do, it's being multiplied here. And kind of remember here, whatever you do to the top or whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So to go from 3 to 12, we had to multiply by 4. So this is times 4. So what that means is we have to multiply our top number by 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, and we do the same thing for this one. To go from 1/4 to something over 12, we need to multiply it by 3. So we have this right here. 4 times 3 is 12. Gotta do the same. 1 times 3 is 12. Or excuse me, is 3. So now we're left with the problem of 8 over 12 plus 3/12. And all we got to do is add the 8 and the 3, which gives us 11 over 12. We check to see if it's in simplest form. It is, and that's our final answer. Okay, so we're going to try one more. We're going to try a subtraction one. So let's say we have 5/6 minus 1/8. Okay, so we got 5/6 minus 1/8. Again, we want to figure out their non-common denominators. We need that least common multiple, or that number that they both have in common. You can start listing them out. You've got 6, you've got 12, you've got 18, 24, and you'll know that's where it is, 24, because 8 times 3 is 24. So if we listed them out to show you, 12, 18, 24, and then for 8 you have 8, 16, and 24. It goes on and on and on. If you didn't realize that, and you multiplied both of them by each other, so you multiplied this one by 8 and this one by 6, you will get the same answer. You will just have to reduce it a little bit. There'll be bigger numbers you have to work with, but you won't, it's not something that you get wrong. It's still, any ones that you get in common will work. It's just the least common multiple is the least amount of work that you'll be able to do. So let's go. From here, again, we need to have our two fractions that now have a denominator of 24. Okay, so 6, we see times 4 is 24. So we do 5 times 4, which is 20. 8 times 3 is 24. Well, 1 times 3, which is 3. And then all we have to do is 20 minus 3, which gives us 17. And then the denominator stays of 24. Okay? Again, key thing is these denominators need to be the same. Do not start subtracting these or adding these depending on what problem it is. The tops are really the only thing you add or subtract. Don't do anything with the bottoms. You're not adding them, you're not subtracting them. All you're doing is you kind of carry them over to the next one. That's it. All right, so I want to show you one more. It has to deal with mixed numbers. It's kind of how we go from there. So let's say we have the problem 7/8 plus 1/2. Okay? Now, again, not common denominators there. We've got 8 and we've got 2. But we don't have to change this one because 2, the factors of 2, you've got 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 is actually a factor, so we only have to change this one. This one can stay. So, to do that again, we know our common denominator is going to be 8. So again, we don't change the first one because it is already 8, but we need to change the second one. So 2 times 4 gives us 8, which gives us the common one. So we gotta do the same thing to the top. 4 times 1 is 4. So now we're left with 7/8 plus 4/8. Now again, the denominators get carried over, that 8 stays on the bottom, and then you just add 7 plus 4, which gives you 11. Now, you can't reduce this technically how it is right now, but you will notice the top is bigger than the bottom. That means this number is bigger than 1. So what we want to do with this is we want to put it into what we call a mixed number, which means it has a whole number and a fraction. So what we do is basically we're pulling out 8s until we're left with whatever change is left over. So here's what we do. We figure out, well, how many times can 8 go into 11? And in this case, it only goes in once. So we've got the big 1. All right, so when we do that, think of it as division. If it helps, we divide in there. Again, 8 goes into 11 once. And then if you remember into there, well, that's 1, 8. And then what are we left with? Well, we're going to be left with 3. So that 3 goes on a fraction of that. So it's going to be 1 3/8. And that's our final answer. Always double check to see if this fraction part of the mixed number can be reduced. In this case, it can't. So we're done. All right. So I'm going to give you a couple problems to work on where you can pause the video, work on them, and then we'll go back and go over them. All right. All right, so you got 4 problems there. So pause the video, work on those, and then hit play again so we can go over them. All right, so hopefully you went over them. And again, key thing here is common denominators. Now some of these are gonna get big, but it's the same steps. So again, we gotta figure out what's our common denominator or your least common multiple between 5 and 3. You should hopefully have gotten 15. If you multiply the 2 together, you get 15. So we're going to get 2 fractions. You got a denominators of 15. Now we got to figure out the numerators. Well, 5 times 3 is 15, so 4 times 3 gives me 12. 3 times 5 is 15, so 2 times 5 is 10. So you get 12 15ths plus 10 15ths. Add them together, you're going to get 22 over 15. Now, if you remember, this one's bigger than 1, so it needs to go to a mixed number. So we figure out, well, 15 can only be pulled out of 22 once. So we're going to have the big one of 1. And then 22 minus 15 is just 7. So you're left with 7 over 15. Okay? So again, if it helps, you've got the 15 divided by the 22. You know it only goes in once. That's your big number. And then the 1 times 15 is 15. You subtract and you get 7. That's what goes on the fraction. Okay, so let's try the other one. Here, we only have to change this one because your least common multiple between 10 and 5 is 10. So this first one doesn't need to be changed. It's just 7/10 minus now something over 10. Well, 5 times 2 is 10. So do the same thing with the top. 3 times 2, which is 6. And then we subtract. 7 minus 6 is just 1, 1/10. That's it. Can't be reduced. Can't really do anything with it. Okay, so let's try now the bigger numbers. All right, 7 and 5. There's really nothing about it. You just got to multiply them in this case, which gives you 35. 7 times 5. So we're going to have a common denominator of 35. All right. Now again, 7 times 5 gives me 35. So you got to do 1 times 5. Remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you need to do to the top to keep them the same. Same thing here. 5 times 7 is 35. We got to do 3 times 7, which is 21. All right, and then you just add the tops. So you're going to get 5 plus 21 gives me 26 over 35. We double check. There's not really any number that can reduce it by. That's our final answer. Okay, and then our last one. We're going to have 6 over 7 and then 2/8. So again, there's nothing easy about it. It's just 7 times 8 to give me the 56. 56 is your least common multiple. And again, same process. 7 times 8 is 56. So 6 times 8, 48. You've got 8 times 7 is 56. So 2 times 7 is 14. And then you just add the top. So again, denominator stays the same. 56 is on the bottom. And you add the tops. You've got 48 plus 14 is going to give you 262. All right. Again, this number on top is bigger. So we got to take care of that. Well, again, it's another one. If you have 56 into 62, well, it only goes in once. And you're left with the 56. You subtract it, it's going to give you 6. So again, this is your big one. This goes on the fraction. And I'm going to pull it down there because lack of room. So you're going to have 1 and 6 over 56. Now, this right here can be reduced. They're both even numbers. So you can divide both of them by 2. So that's the 1 still going to stay the same. But you have 6 divided by 2, which is 3. And then you have 56 divided by 2, which is going to be 28. And that's your final answer, 1 and 3 over 28. So if you got one of these, make sure you reduce it. All right, hope you learned something. Thanks.